Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Asad and I'm a final year medical student at the Aga Khan University. And today I've been invited to talk a little bit about application insights with respect to AKU, the campus life, different insights from my undergraduate experience over there, and then last 15 days basically till the AKU test and the blueprint with respect to what you guys should be doing during this period of time. So with that, let's get started. So I will not be able to see the chat during my presentation. So, but if anyone has any questions, please just ask them in the YouTube chat and someone from the team will message it to me and I will make sure to answer that. Aside from that, we'll have a dedicated question answer session towards the end of the session, inshallah. So at that period of time, whatever questions you might not be able to ask during this session, you can ask at the end. So without further ado, so admission to AKU is obviously highly competitive. You guys all know that, and it's extremely well renowned, most especially for this MBBS program. And it's not just about high marks, so AKU looks for well-rounded individuals with strong conceptual understanding of things, critical thinking skills, and most importantly, leadership potential. So an outline with respect to today's session. So I'm going to be talking about my journey and acing the test, my undergraduate experience at AKU specifically, and 1 second. Yeah, financial assistance at AKU, different things with respect to the hostel accommodation, and then a 15-day plan with respect to what you should be doing these last couple of days, and then an exam day checklist. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, a little bit about my journey. So I'm okay. So to start with, I guess my pre-med experience. So I'm from KGS, from Karachi Grammar School in Karachi, Pakistan, and I went through the O-level, A-level pathway. So after graduating from the Karachi Grammar School in 2020, I then applied for the AKU test and gave the test in MD-CAT that year. We were the first year to give the national MD-CAT, because before that it was previously just the provincial MD-CAT. So we were the first year to give the national MD-CAT, and our exam was in person on paper, not digitally the way that it is now. And my journey was a little bit different from what your guys' will be, specifically because I was the COVID year, the first year to have COVID impact them and impact the admissions process. So because of that, my test kept getting delayed, from June to July to August to September to then finally October. And the AKU test then happened in October, and then the MD-CAT happened about 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. I can't quite remember. But the thing is that the way that, of course, I studied and the way that perhaps, all of my batchmates and my contemporaries who gave the exam with me studied is going to be a little bit different from what you guys will be able to do, especially because, we had a lot of uncertainty first off, and then second off, our A-level exams also got cancelled, and then third off, because it kept getting delayed again and again, we ended up having more time to study. But this is something I'm going to sort of talk about, as well as the caveat of the fact that we had more time and how that impacted this and how it's going to impact you guys. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So then, alhamdulillah, after getting accepted to AKU, since then it's been great, alhamdulillah. I didn't apply to any other medical colleges in Pakistan. Of course, I did give the MD-CAT since that's a requirement. I'm going to talk about that later. But for me, in Pakistan, the major university that I had applied to for medicine was AKU. And alhamdulillah, I managed to make it through. So without further ado, let's then move on. So about acing the AKU test. So we're going to talk about a couple of important factors. The first one is that you need a very strong academic foundation. So aside from obviously having studied for the test itself, AKU itself has a couple of minimum grade requirements that you have to be meeting. So for Pakistani students, a minimum of 70% in FSC is required. This is for Pakistani students, but for inter-FSC metric students. For A-level students, a minimum of 3 B grades is required, and those have to be in physics, chem, and bio. But the thing is, it's very important to remember that these are, at the end of the day, just minimum grades. You cannot be at the minimum and then sort of hope or be optimistic about getting in, because you have to be significantly higher than the minimum that's required. right? Because everyone else will be. So successful candidates more often than not have significantly higher scores, 85 plus in FSC, and then A or A star grades in A levels in these three subjects. For Pakistani students for the MDCAT, so there might be some of you guys who are watching this who are international students, but for Pakistani students, you need to pass the MDCAT, which is by PMVC. The passing score is 65%. It's a 200 question test, so you need to score above 130 um, to basically pass. This in my year was 60%, so it was 120. But of course, PMDC changes this requirement year by year, so that's just something you have to keep in mind. But the thing is that you just have to pass this test because AKU primarily focuses on its own tests. It's one of the few universities in Pakistan that has the privilege of being allowed to conduct its own test and make that the primary requirement. But the MDCAT requirement of passing is still there, so you have to pass. That being said, though, for anyone who is applying for medicine in Pakistan, it is very, very important to not just give this exam for passing unless you have an option abroad. Because if you are staying in Pakistan for medicine, it's very important to remember that you're applying to every other medical college within your province as well. And if you're doing that, you need a very high MDCAT score. This is not only obviously relevant for places like Punjab and everything, where you're cutting your sort of closing merit for even your top, like lowest ranked government universities like 92% or 93%, but also obviously for Sindh, KPK, and Balochistan. So it's very important to remember that the MDCAT, while it's just a requirement for AKU, for you just needing to pass, you have to do really, really well on the MDCAT to be considered for any other medical college. So just keep that in mind, and you want to make sure that you have all your bases covered. With respect to then conceptual understanding, AKU does emphasize conceptual clarity over rote memorization wherever that's possible, and they want to see if you can apply what you've learned, not just recall straight hard facts. So this is also the basis on which the AKU test and the MDCAT are a little bit different from one another. So the MDCAT, more often than not, is going to really just be you recalling learned facts. For example, I can remember like a couple of questions in my MDCAT were questions about, this, what is this element's atomic number, right? Like that is pure rote memorization. There is no conceptual understanding over there. But a lot of the questions that AKU is going to ask you are going to be application of concepts, not just straight rote recall. So keep that in mind. So a little bit about the format of the AKU test. So there's going to be 20 questions from each of bio, physics, and chem. Those are each going to have 20 MCQs. It's going to be an MCQ-based test. There's no theory-based writing answers. Then you're going to have 20 to 30 MCQs in scientific reasoning. This changes from year to year, and then 20 to 30 math reasoning questions. This again changes from year to year. So the total number of questions that you're going to have is going to be about 100 to 120, and the time you have is 2 hours. This again changes from year to year. This year, I'm not exactly sure what the format is, but that's available obviously on the AKU website, which I'm sure you guys are all acquainted with. But this is generally how the test goes. And bio focuses mainly on cell bio, genetics, human physiology. Chem focuses on organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and then biochem with an emphasis on reaction mechanisms. Physics you have to focus on mechanics, thermodynamics, and electromagnetism are very frequently tested. Another thing that physics often does test, even though for some reason they say, they don't mention it in the syllabus for the AKU test, but it did come, for example, in my test, is lenses. So that's just one random niche topic, which is not there in the physics syllabus in the AKU test, but it is something that sometimes can come. So, might as well just go over it, especially because it is part of both the A2 as well as the inter syllabuses. Scientific reasoning is another section. This section is highly analytical, and it assesses your ability to interpret and evaluate scientific information. It often involves data interpretation, research summaries, and conflicting viewpoints. So, this makes it sound a little bit more fancier than it actually is, but the scientific reasoning session is really just a way for them to see, do you actually have any problem solving skills? Because biochem, physics, these aren't the kinds of questions, at least in this exam, where you have to do lots of calculations, so you have to really think through certain things. But the scientific reasoning section is a lot like, brain teasers, like things where you have to think a little bit more about the question beyond what is immediately obvious to you. And the mathematics reasoning section is a little bit similar to that as well. It focuses on quantitative and mathematical reasoning skills. This is more about analytical thinking and mental math than complex formula-based calculations. Again, they just want to see, do you have the ability to process information quickly and analyze information that is available to you. So if I was to liken this to other, I guess, examinations or examination formats, scientific reasoning and mathematics reasoning are things that are very similar to the SAT. If you guys have given that, a lot of obviously students who have done the Pakistani curriculum in terms of internet metric will not have given the SAT, but this is quite similar to that. It's not very high level mathematics at all. And even if, for example, you are a little bit anxious and a little bit uncertain about the fact that, yeah, I've not done maths in God knows how long, or I hate maths, then this is not complicated. So it's really just straightforward mental math, and you won't need any calculators or anything like that. So yeah, this is the general overview of the AQ entry test. And again, I'm sure you guys all know this, but there is negative marking for any incorrect section, any incorrect answer in the biochem and physics sections, and there is no negative marking in the science, reasoning, and mathematics sections. And the way this obviously translates to exam giving strategy is that you make sure to attempt all the questions in scientific reasoning and mathematics, irrespective of whether you know the answer or whether you don't. So with respect to how this ties into the overall admissions criteria or the admissions process, so the AQ test does carry a very significant weight in the overall admission aggregate, and it is a lot more important than your FSC and A-level marks. You have to remember that while I said before that, you know, the 3Bs in A-levels or the 70% in FSC is the minimum requirement to apply to AKU, that at the end of the day is just a threshold. And once you cross that threshold, there really isn't that much of a difference between someone who has like a 71% in FSE versus like a 90%, as far as the AKU admissions criteria is concerned. And the reason for that is because the test itself is the real determinant. Okay, are you academically strong enough, or does AKU value you to be academically strong enough to actually be a part of the program? And the reason I say that is because irrespective of whether you have 3Bs or 3A stars in A levels, or 60% or 71% or 99% in FSC, if you don't pass the test, then that's where it finishes, right? Like it does not matter anymore what your MDCAT score is, what extracurriculars you might have had. One second. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so the thing is that it really is all over if you have not passed the test, and that is why this is more important in at least the admissions aggregate. That being said, though, obviously someone who has a 99% in FSC or has 3A stars or 5A stars or whatever many A stars in A levels is more likely to then pass the test, not because the A levels count for anything or the FSC marks count for anything, but because probably they are just maybe more academically inclined than someone who scored a little lower. So that's just something to keep in mind, that the test is very, very important in the admission aggregate. So in essence, to get into AKU, you obviously need excellent academic performances. You need to pass the AKU entry test, which is the most important thing. Then you need strong interview skills, demonstrating your motivation, ethical understanding, and leadership potential, and a well-rounded profile with meaningful extracurricular involvement. This, you know, I find, or at least across my years in AKU, I found that a lot of people who are applying to AKU find it to be a lot more stressful, for the reason that they're like, यार कभी जिंदगी में interview नहीं दिया हुआ, या you know extracurricular involvement सही तरीके हमारी नहीं है, we don't have extracurriculars the way that other people might. But the thing is, you know, these are all secondary things. The most important thing which people often fail to realize is you have to pass the test, right? Because of the 9,000, 10,000, 8,000, however many people apply, only a select few actually get to the stage where interview skills and extracurricular involvements even matter, right? So just getting sort of worrying about stage two before you've passed stage one is not the right approach. As of right now, none of you guys need to care about the strong interview skills, extracurricular involvement. ये सब बात की बात है. For the time being, because of course you just have 15 days left, just focus all your efforts on passing the AQ entry test, and उसके बाद देखा जाएगा कि बाकी सारी चीजें क्या हैं. Interview skills are not difficult to develop, and you're not supposed to be like the president of the United States, the president of Pakistan, in terms of the way that you orate in your interview, right? Like if you're fine, if you can just have a conversation, that's good enough. And similarly with extracurricular involvement, right? Meaningful extracurricular involvement is subjective. You don't have to have landed on the moon, or you don't have to have represented Pakistan in 3 national tournaments or international tournaments. If it's something that matters to you, that's good enough, because that is the kind of thing that they're looking for. Really, they just want to see do you have any interests outside of medicine that make you a more mature, well-rounded individual. Whether or not you are like Neil Armstrong in that respect does not really matter. So again, the bottom line is you have to focus on passing the test. Baaki sari cheezein dekhi jayenge baad mein. So the AKU undergraduate experience. So the first and most important thing is obviously that AKU prioritizes academic rigor and excellence, and it has a very demanding curriculum in comparison to other medical colleges, not only in Karachi and Sindh, but also throughout Pakistan. So AKU's programs, especially the medicine and nursing programs, are very highly demanding. So you should expect obviously challenging curriculum that emphasizes critical thinking, problem solving, and evidence-based learning. And just follows that medicine itself is hard, but AKU like sort of pushes you a little bit further. And the reason I say that is because your hours are often longer, especially in clinical years. In fact, they are much longer than most other medical colleges. And the second thing is that in your basic science years is even you go much faster. So a lot of other programs do not have a modular curriculum per se, and they have that annual based system where you go discipline wise across a couple of years. And then even in your clinical years, you're sort of revisiting concepts that you did not cover properly in the first 2 years. But AKU sort of covers all of its basic sciences things in the first 2 years, and all 3 subsequent years are just clinically demanding and clinically relevant. So that's why you go a lot faster. You go a lot faster, you have a lot more hours. So it is a lot more demanding than other places. But then again, at the end of the day, you're sort of pushed so hard that you do develop into a very, into a great, inshallah, prospective position. So another thing is that AKU is a research intensive university, and it does prioritize research. So students have an opportunity to engage in research activities, not only as part of extracurricular activities as it is in most other universities, but also part of the curriculum. So AKU makes you go through a 6-week program of basic science research, where you do contribute to lab work of faculty who have ongoing research projects that are obviously basic science projects. And then you have an 8-week opportunity to go through this community health sciences module, which is really just 8 weeks of you focusing on how to do research and how to interpret epidemiological research and why this matters. So this is part of the curriculum, right? So even if you have 0 extracurricular involvement in research throughout your 5 years at AKU, just by virtue of these 14 weeks that you have, you will most certainly have been exposed to it, and you most certainly will have had an opportunity to learn through it. So that is an important thing. And then you have, of course, the renowned faculty that come with the AKU name, with the AKU brand. So you'll be taught by a diverse and highly qualified set of faculty, often with international accreditations. A lot of them have been trained from abroad. And then, in my opinion, what the most important selling point of AKU with respect to clinical years, at least, because basic sciences years are again just classrooms. Anyone can have a good class, and I'm sure there's lots of other medical colleges in Pakistan who have better classes perhaps than AKU in basic sciences. The most important thing is the student to faculty ratio, because in every other medical college, especially in Pakistan, especially in Sindh and Karachi, you have a very large number of students who are assigned to every clinical preceptor. Clinical preceptor is just a fancy word for faculty. So oftentimes you have 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 people in a clinical group assigned to one person or assigned to one OR at the same time for only like a 2-hour period of time. or a 3 hour period of time. But in AKU, it's a 3:1 ratio on average. So it can even be better than this. It can be a 1:1 ratio sometimes, and sometimes it's obviously like 4:1 or 5:1 at maximum. But really, that makes a humongous difference when you are doing clinical years and how much focus you individually have from faculty. And in my opinion, if there is no other reason that you want to come to AKU, this is the most important one. In addition to this, obviously, AKU has vibrant campus life and extracurricular activities. So AKU boasts a wide array of student societies, and these include things like the Student Research Forum, something that you guys might have heard about already, SRF, Arts and Culture Society, HGSOTS, Sports and Society and Athletics Club, FALA, which is the Patients Welfare Society, lots of academic interest groups like the Surgery Interest Group, the Internal Medicine Interest Group, Pediatrics Interest Group, etc., etc. Society for Promoting Innovation and Education, which is SPI, and then lots and lots of other things. So, there's a billion student societies, and there is something for everyone, right? So you can find something that interests you and something that you want to be a part of. AKU also has a world-class sports and rehabilitation centers called the SRC, and it has multiple sporting facilities for various sports, including indoor volleyball, basketball, table tennis, squash, badminton, futsal, cricket, swimming, running, weightlifting, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, ठीक है? And it's an amazing facility, obviously, and it is free for students and faculty and all affiliated people to use. So this is a huge aspect that you should avail, should you, inshallah, make it AKU. And then community service is obviously a huge part of the AKU experience. So students often collaborate with local communities in various initiatives with societies like SPI that we talked about on the previous slide. Humanity Initiative is another one that you guys might have heard about, and Quadragon. So a lot of these societies are involved in continuous community outreach, community service, educating members of the community. And then in times of dire need or dire straits, these are the guys, or these are the societies that sort of lead the front on giving back. So, for example, the most notable recent contribution was during the flooding of Sindh, right? So all the obviously AKU faculty had an AKU sponsored camp and stuff as well, but all of these student societies also had student-led initiatives. One of the most notable ones over here is the Humanity Initiative. So this is something that across the last couple of years has really expanded, not only obviously within the medical sphere, but it's really done a lot of really cool things with respect to educating the community, with respect to female health and female and contraception initiatives and stuff like that. And it often has student-led clinics even. So, the opportunity to be able to doing student-led clinics in areas that are underserved is an opportunity that you can look forward to should you be a part of the AKU community. Then with respect to residential facilities, or otherwise called the hostels, for those of you who will be from out of the city, from outside of Karachi, so AKU has both on and off-campus hostels, but first years will be given the off-campus hostel. And the reason is because AKU's batch size, especially for the Sonam, for the School of Nursing and Midwifery, has increased a little bit over time. And because of that, the hostel space is limited. So because of that, the first year undergrads, first year MBBS batch, they will always be off campus, except for maybe 2 or 3 people. But those off-campus hostels are also very secure with transportation facilities to and from campus provided. They're also nearby, and there's a constant shuttle running between the places. And after first year, you are guaranteed an on-campus hostel. And that hostel includes facilities such as an in-house hostel cook, common rooms with televisions, and laundry. So the hostel itself, for each individual person, it's a single room with air conditioning, which you don't have to pay any additional costs for. Although in the official policies, AKU does write that you have to pay for your air conditioning usage in the electricity bill. To this day, this was the thing that they told us 5 years ago, but like till now, that's not been implemented. So as of right now, you can use the AC as much as you want. They give kettle, they give bed sheets, they have attached bathrooms. I mean, not attached to the room, but each floor has a bathroom. So and they are very clean and clean twice a day. And then of course, free internet access. So with respect to this, the bottom line over here is that a huge selling point of the AKU experience is the fact that you get a single private room with an AC. Just the fact that you have an AC is like a humongous step up from a lot of other hostels throughout Pakistan. And the second thing is that you have a single room that you don't need to share with anyone. That is again a rarity. Even non-medical universities, like the super renowned ones like IBA, LUMS, even they, for example, do not have these. So it is worth considering that, this is a super, super premium experience that you will get. In addition to that, you have dedicated staff 24/7, and it's a very secure environment because it's on the campus. So you don't have like dedicated hostel security or, like campus guard per se, but you have the actual security staff who is responsible for the hospital itself, also taking care of you as well. The female hostel is a lot more sort of, well secured and everything, and especially because it's further away from the campus, in the sense that the male hostel is right next to the medical college campus. The female hostel is next to the School of Nursing Wala campus. But again, it's super, super secure. Nothing to be concerned about. Additional things that AKU does support its students with is the counseling and wellness office. So AKU places a significant emphasis, obviously, on student well-being and offers lots of counseling services, confidential counseling appointments with the student counselor. There's 4 of them, and urgent support for mental health crises. You can get them ahead of the line so much lower. This is especially important because generally, because of the lack of psychiatrists and qualified psychological counselors within Pakistan. Generally, for those of you who have ever attempted to go to a psychiatrist, the wait times are anywhere between 4 to 6 months for the good ones, and then even for the ones who are a little bit less great or well-renowned, 2 to 3 months, right? So the fact that you can get them so quickly is it's a very big deal. And then you have lots of wellness programs and workshops and events that focus on mental health awareness, stress management, overall well-being. And there's lots of student societies at AKU. The major one is named Aurora, that focus on a lot of these, small stress management, stress relief workshops. And a lot of them are, super fun to attend as well. So it is worth considering that this does exist. And if you should you ever require it, this support network is in place. Then you have what is the Office of Student Experience. So this is the central hub for student services dedicated to supporting students' professional and personal development. These are the guys that oversee a lot of the student activities in AKU. Lots of the big initiatives that we do, like the Sports Olympiad, the Inter-University Karachi Sports Olympiad, the International Student Research Conference. All of those things are things that are overlooked by the Office of Student Experience, and they are like the sort of samajh lo administrative oversight that you can have for any of the activities that you do want to do. And they promote lots of initiatives provided that you have a clear-cut plan. So the most notable example of this, actually, the most recent one, is the fact that a couple of students wanted to put together an adventurers club in AKU, something that did not exist previously, but it does exist in other non-medical universities in Pakistan, like LUMS, most, like, I guess, notably at LUMS. So they recently, put that together and actually did organize a 7-day trip to Naran Valley, which was a combined effort, obviously, between the students who were part of the nursing team as well as the MBBS team and stuff. But they did it, right? And the fact is that it had not been done before, but the Office of Student Experience supported them in this endeavor. So really, this is the bottom line of this sort of point, is that should you have an idea, should you want to implement an idea, there is support for you to implement that idea. And then, of course, the physical well-being, Wali services, we already talked about the SRC. So with respect to financial assistance, and the reason that I'm going to touch a little bit upon this is because obviously the AKU tuition fee is very expensive. So AKU is known for its transparent merit-based admissions process, and it offers generous financial aid to students from all backgrounds so that you can attend irrespective of the financial background. And a testament to that fact is that 70 to 80% of students at AKU are on some kind of financial aid. So need-based financial aid, need-based means ke irrespective of merit, is usually given in the form of loans and grants. So the first thing, loan. What is a loan? So the student loan is an interest-free loan, which you get with an annual administrative charge of 5% from the time of the award of the student loan. So that needs to be paid back within 7 years of graduation. And the way that this is paid back is that you have a 2-year grace period after you graduate, where you don't need to begin paying, but after the 2-year grace period, you have 5 years where you have to necessitate the loan repayments. So this is the way, I mean, again, these are not that important right now. But if you work for AKU during the period of time of your loan repayments, the debt is cut in half for the year that you're working for AKU. So that's an important consideration also to make. Should you come to AKU, but for example, the loan repayments are a big financial burden, you can stick around at AKU, pursue your house job there, pursue your residency there, and that will allow you to pay these loan repayments very quickly, and it'll probably maybe ease the burden a little bit. खैर ये बहुत बात की बात है, it doesn't really matter, and the reason it doesn't really matter right now, as of today, for 15 days leading up to the AQ test, is because scholarships and financial aid are decided after your admission has been confirmed. They do not affect your admission process in any manner, and this is something that always happens after you got in. So after the people get in is when you then have an opportunity to apply for financial aid, and that is then inshallah when you will get it. But besides that, the other opportunities of grants that we talked about, that's loans and grants do not need to be paid back. The proportion of your financial aid that comes in form of loan versus in the form of a grant is obviously on the basis of how much you actually need it and what AKU deems to be their own internal criteria. And then scholarships are also given where the top 5 students who also need financial assistance are given a free ride through the 5 years. But this is very important to remember that this is merit plus need based. If you are in the top 5, but you don't need aid, because Alhamdulillah, for example, you are able to afford it without it being a significant financial dent, then you're not going to get this scholarship. This is only for those people who not only are in the top 5, but also people who actually truly need this. So it's merit plus need based. So some of the benefits, obviously, of coming to AKU, aside from the things that we've already talked about in terms of the academics, are that it's a multidisciplinary environment because it fosters interactions with people from all backgrounds within Pakistan. And that's important because a lot of other medical colleges, especially your provincial government medical colleges, so I'm from Karachi, from Sindh, so places like Dow, SMC, Liaquat, Ziauddin, the predominant sort of social demographic that exists over there is Karachiites, right? But this is one of the few rare opportunities that you will have within Pakistan, in medicine at least, to interact with people from all over Pakistan. So, because there is no quota, that's very important to remember, that there is no quota for anyone or any specific city or any specific school, even if, for example, historically it has seemed that, a specific demographic from a specific school in a specific city seem to be getting in more. There is no official quota. And that has been increasingly shown over the last couple of years, where hostelites form a predominant majority, actually, of the 100-student batch that AKU has. So really, the fact that you can learn from peers from various backgrounds in Pakistan is something that is very enriching for both your learning as well as personal experiences. And then, like I said, they have a very small batch size of just 100 students. This is, again, much smaller than a lot of other medical colleges. And so by virtue of that, you get to interact with almost every single batchmate across the 5 years that you have. This is not like, for example, if you have a batch size of 350, 400, where you might go the entire 5 years without ever having talked to people who are in your graduating class. So just by virtue of the fact that AKU randomizes all your groups, you have no opportunity to do your own group making and whatnot. So just by virtue of that, and by virtue of randomizing for various preclinical and clinical commitments, you do get an opportunity to interact with almost every single batchman and develop some kind of relationship with them. And then AKU emphasizes a lot of values like ethics, compassion, leadership, service to humanity. And for these things, they also conduct lots of additional sessions. You have something called longitudinal themes, which are things that contribute to the softer aspects of practicing medicine. And these are things that, happen regularly throughout the year. Sessions that focus on law and medicine, ethics in medicine. How do you deal with ethical dilemmas? AI, for example, in medicine, like we had that session about 3 weeks ago. How do you deal with finances as a doctor, as a prospective physician? All of those things, which are things that sort of impact, I guess, your practice of medicine, but add to you being a little bit more refined as a prospective physician beyond just, the bookish knowledge that you're going to have already. Those are things that are really focused upon. And that, in my opinion, adds to how polished you are at the end of the 5 years. And then ICRA, which is AKU's logo, or AKU's motto, or at least the Aga Khan University in Karachi, the hospital's motto, is impact, quality, relevance, and access. This is something that is emphasized throughout not only your MBBS time, but also then when you proceed to becoming a clinician. So with that, that's all, the fancy schmancy stuff with respect to the AQ undergraduate stuff, but as of right now, what is the most important thing? What is the number one priority that you guys need to have? It is passing the AQ test. The AQ entrance exam is super, super competitive, as I'm sure you all know, with a passing rate of approximately just 3%. And this is just for passing the AQ test, right? So the 3% is not a very high number, but that is why the last 15 days right now are crucial for solidifying your preparation. So here's a strategy that we've broken down for you. We're going to go over that a little bit now. So the first thing, the phase one, so days 1 to 7, you have to do an intensive review and weakness targeting. So review your previous mock test results, identify topics where you consistently perform poorly, dedicate more time to these, and don't just skim them, right? A mistake that a lot of people often make is that, let's say you get a question wrong, or perhaps you're a little bit shaky on that, you'll read through it one time and then think that you remembered it. But really, that is very, very short term knowledge. If you ask yourself in really 15 minutes, what have you actually read? If you're not actively doing, if you're not doing active learning, then it's very, very difficult to remember any of those things. So make sure to try and understand the core concepts, and then utilize YouTube videos or online resources such as, premier.pk if you're struggling with any specific topics. So the AQ test, again, as we've talked about, focuses on conceptual understanding, focus on consolidating your concepts rather than focusing on superficial knowledge. For physics and chem, focus on understanding the underlying principles and how to apply formulas rather than just rote learning them. Because if you know the formula but don't know how to apply it, then it's meaningless. And for bio, emphasize understanding physiological processes and genetic principles. Oftentimes, MDCAT ke liye, you also have to do this. You have to sort of memorize physics constants because you're not going to be given any sheet. At least this is the way that it was for me. I don't know if it's changed since then. But AKU will not ask you fazul sawal where you have to remember constants which you could easily just Google, if you were actually doing it in a real world setting. So again, the bottom line is focus on principles, not on cold hard facts, because the principles are what will allow you to solve those questions a lot better. Again, solve as many MCQs from as many reliable sources that you have. So very important, remember that, a lot of sources of past paper books in Pakistan are not exactly very reliable. This I'm talking about generally for medical tests and stuff. Not just the AQ test specifically, but for the MDCAT, for the NUMS test, the Ziauddin test, etc., etc. They're not reliable because a lot of the questions are wrong. So premed.pk is a really, really good resource. It did not exist at my time when I was giving the test. But, I have gone through the resources since it has been created since by one of my batchmates only. And they have done a really, really good job of vetting all the questions and do them under time conditions. This builds speed and familiarizes you with the exam pressure. More often than not, you might think that you're, doing absolutely wonderful, but in reality, it's a little bit harder than you might think to actually stick with the time that you need. And then you have to analyze every incorrect answer. You have to understand why you have gotten the question wrong. Is it because you couldn't recall the factoid? Is it because you had an incorrect concept? Is it because you just had no idea what it was? So you have to make sure that you sort of understand why you get something wrong, and us hisab se then you practice. Because let's say, for example, if you get 60% the first time you do XYZ test, you will consistently keep getting 60% unless unless and until you understand why the 40% you are getting wrong is wrong. And another thing that you could do is maintain a log of different questions. So make sure that you know the कौन questions, for example, तुम्हें थोड़े से ज़्यादा मुश्किल लगे थे, and then उस हिसाब से you go back and you practice those ones again, so that you understand that harder concept. And since biochem physics have negative marking, you have to practice calculated guessing. So if you can eliminate at least 2 answers, it might be worth making an educated guess just by virtue of game theory. But if you have no idea, it's more often than not safer to leave it blank. So you should develop a strategy for attempting sections with negative marking first, as you have more time to think them through. In my opinion, as long as, and this was my test taking strategy as well, as long as you can eliminate to at least 2 options, just go for it and make an educated guess. The likelihood that that is going to pay off for you is a lot higher then should you skip on the pretense that you're going to get a minus 0.25? Obviously, this test taking strategy differs depending on how many negative marks you get. So this is not a sort of overall thing for every other test, but specifically for AKU, where you have a minus 0.25, you should attempt it if you can eliminate to at least two options, to at most two options, sorry, not at least. Develop a strategy for attempting sections. Yeah, wait. So just go through them first. Don't do the scientific reasoning and math section first. Go through the physics, biochem sections first. Should you have an option? I think I had an option, but I think now they give it stagger karke, so you have to do what they give you. For physics and maths, create a concise formula sheet, review it daily. This is for your major formulas. Like in the sense that obviously AQ is probably not going to give you the major formulas that you should know, like V equals IR, but you should remember those so that they're on your fingertips when you're attempting questions. You can't afford to spend more time than you should, than you basically have per question. You really have about at most maybe a minute per question, but that's really quite a lot. So you should be trying to spend at least at most about 30 seconds. Again, and the reason for that is because once you're done, then you can go back and actually check through your answers. And if something is taking you longer than 30 seconds, it's something that is worth probably revisiting later. Like, go through the stuff come back to the stuff you don't. For chem, review important reactions and mechanisms, and for biology, read diagrams and flowcharts for processes. Again, this is not a magic formula. I'm sure you guys know best, obviously, how you study and what works best for you. And us hisab se, whatever works best for you, you will go with that. If, for example, it's easier for you to remember bio by rereading diagrams, then absolutely go ahead. If it's easier for you by just reading the textbook again and again, go for that as well, because that's what I did. But again, each person's individual learning style is going to be different. And by this point in time, obviously, you having finished school, you will have a decent-ish idea of what works best for you. So stick with that. Don't try anything new. Okay. Don't do anything new or go on some super quirky thing that you might have seen some super hyped productivity YouTuber saying, because this is not the time. You just have 15 days left. You have to consolidate, buckle down, stick with what works, and what works best. So from days 8 to 12, which is phase 2, you should do full-length mock tests every other day. Simulate the actual exam, take full-length mock tests, and treat it as the real thing. There's no distractions. Follow time limits strictly, and this is essential, obviously, for building stamina and then building a habit of actually solving questions under the exam conditions. So the thing with the AKU test specifically, unlike the MDCAT, is that the AKU test does not release its questions. So there are no real past papers per se. But the thing is that by virtue of students who have given the test and then sort of piecemeal together, mila milu ke chand questions idhar udhar upar niche kar lete hain. So premed.pk has sort of refined those things and then combined other questions from other different tests to put together an exam or mock exams that do somewhat simulate the actual environment. I mean, since there is no other thing, it is worth doing those. Because at the very least, not only do you get the sort of exam conditions wali cheese, but also you're just solving additional questions on relevant topics. So it is going to help you at the end of the day. So the pre-med full-length mock tests are great. And obviously, if there's any other resources you guys want to use for those, make sure to do that. But a full-length test is important. And again, like we already talked about, identify patterns in the mistake, why you're getting those mistakes, how can you sort of mitigate those errors, and then adjust your strategy for the next mock test based on the analysis that you do. So again, like I talked about, easy first, difficult later. That's what we've already just talked about right now. If you can't solve it within 20 or 30 seconds, move on, focus on it later, don't waste time. So for scientific reasoning and math, so even though they don't have negative marking, these sections can be time consuming a little bit, because for a lot of you, it might be the first time that you're having to work through questions where you have to think a little bit more than just the straight up rote learning that you might have had to do otherwise. So logical reasoning questions from various different sources are quite good. Like, honestly, I did Facebook brain teasers, but for the most part, that is the kind of question that the kind of questions that you might get asked. And for maths, focus on understanding patterns and applying concepts from the SAT one. We already talked about that earlier in the session, or similar tests of similar level. So really the kind of maths that you need to know, because I'm sure a lot of you might be a little bit anxious about, yeah, maybe the last time we studied maths was before metric or before inter. Maybe we've not taken maths since then. Maybe I did not take maths throughout A levels, for example, and I've been out of touch with it for 2 years. Really the level of maths that you need to know is that of an eighth grader. Everything else is really just going to be mental maths and application of different concepts that you should already know. You're not going to be asked to calculate the, I don't know, I don't even know anymore, man. But things like, क्या कहते हैं, so area of a circle, circumference, इस तरह की चीजें जो कि you need calculators for and everything. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be like straight up proportions and whatnot. You're not going to be asked, obviously, to do the normal. For example, statistics, you guys have studied the normal distribution. You're not going to be asked to calculate what is the test statistic and the probability of something being true, or the hypothesis testing. इस तरह की चीजें नहीं आती. It's super simple, straightforward stuff. And then your last 3 days, 13, 14, 15. Avoid learning new topics. This is the time for consolidating what you already know. Go through your notes, formula sheets, the questions you've marked as difficult, and focus on quick revisions of high-yield topics. अगर इस वक्त पे, for example, तुम्हें बहुत सारी चीजें नहीं आती, it's not the time to now learn new topics, because what you do now is that you risk compromising your knowledge on stuff that you already do know. So like I said before, focus on what you know, buckle down, do what is already, works best for you in terms of obviously studying, but even what to study. Don't start learning new things just 3 days before the exam, right? And again, ye sara kuch, everything that I've said is an ideal case scenario. I'm sure there's going to be tons of you guys who are going to be studying like 24 hours a day in the last 3 days. I know I did. And that's fine too. But again, it's far from ideal. So try your best to learn as much stuff as you can before this last 2-3 day period. And obviously, if it comes down to it, you will have to, but avoid it to whatever extent is possible, because that is not ideal. It's suboptimal. Prioritize sleep and nutrition, crucial for optimal brain function. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep every day. Eat healthy, balanced meals. Avoid heavy or new foods that might upset your stomach. These are super, super straightforward stuff. Which I'm sure you've heard billions of times across your life, across all the billions of exams that you guys have given. But it really is that simple. Like, this is the magic formula, if there is to be one. Sleeping will allow for you to consolidate the information that you studied in the previous day in your brain. Pulling all-nighters does not work. Like, no matter how much you think it might work for you, it does not work. Because unless and until you sleep, those neural connections for the stuff that you've studied just cannot be made. And again, obviously, don't eat out in the days leading up to your test, because khuda na khasta, I'm sure, as you know, the gamt and the khalazat of Pakistani street food or Pakistani food in general, agar kuch bhi ho gaya na, you will regret it. So just make sure that, play it safe to whatever extent is possible. Practice relaxation techniques if you are the kind of person that has exam anxiety or performance anxiety. Deep breathing, light stretching, these are exercises or techniques that will help you sort of calm down on the day of the exam. And visualize success. If going into the exam you think you are failing, or that it's just not going to happen, yaar 3% ka acceptance rate hai, kya mazak hai bhai, main kabhi bhi nahi hone wala. If that is the way that you're thinking, then it's not going to happen straight up, right? So to give yourself a fighting chance, you have to visualize that, mera hoga. Kisi aur ka beshak na ho, lekin mera hoga. And talk to someone supported, obviously, if you're feeling overwhelmed, because this is an overwhelming time. I'm sure, applying to medicine, especially in Pakistan, is a very stressful experience for a lot of people. So, it's okay to not feel okay. And if you want to talk to someone, that's very important to make sure that on the day that you need to perform, your exam performance is not compromised. Confirm your exam venue, time, required documents, all the, straightforward, run-of-the-mill fluff. Plan your commute, avoid last-minute rush, blah, blah, blah. Prepare your bag the night before. You provide stationery, but again, always good to be prepared. So on the day of the exam, stay hydrated, read instructions carefully. Like, read instructions carefully is so important, because like I said, the AQ test does change from year to year. And on the day, for example, अगर उन्होंने कोई curve ball मार दी and आपने फिर बोला यार अजीब, मैंने टेस्ट ही नहीं पढ़ा था, मुझे नहीं पता था कि सारे सिर्फ 15 क्वेश्चंस होंगे, चूंकि 15 क्वेश्चंस होंगे तो फिर उस हिसाब से टाइम कम मिलेगा मुझे, तो आई वाज प्लानिंग ऑन दिस दैट. It does not matter. Read the instructions carefully. Stay positive. Believe in your preparation and your ability to perform well. You guys have worked immensely hard to this point. It's just the last 100 meters. This is a marathon, obviously, applying to medicine, getting into AKU, inshallah, giving the MD billion other things. But this is the last 100 meters, at least for the AKU test. Don't lose your steam in just the last 100 meters when you've already done such an amazing job for the rest of the 5,000 meters. Reach early, arrive at the exam center well before the scheduled time, and don't panic. If you encounter a difficult question, try it for 20 seconds. Nahi aata, move on. A lot of the time in the AKU test, if there is a question that you, having studied really, really hard, are not getting, it is likely, not guaranteed obviously, but it is likely that other people will also find that question quite hard. And if the majority of students who give I think not majority, I think it's 95% is the number, which if this of 95% of students that attempt a given question get it wrong, they will cancel the question. In my year, I think, so we had 15 questions in biochem and physics each, so a total of 45. And on 45 questions, mein se, I think 11 questions were cancelled, right? And it just happened to be, for example, that for a lot of people, those 11 questions were the one that they were like, yaar, ye mujhse galat ho gaye. But, it's possible it might be cancelled, so just don't dwell on it. अगर आप उस रट में चले जाएं कि यार ये भी गलत हुआ, ये भी गलत हुआ, ये भी गलत हुआ, then you're going to get every subsequent question wrong as well. So skip it, come back later, and inshallah you guys will do great. So now for questions and answers. So I'm sure there's been quite a few in the chat, so I'm going to try going through these one by one. Oh, Lord. Okay, yeah. So there's now 180 marks of MDCAT. Okay, damn. So it has changed. Finally, tell about scholarship. Yep, covered that. 15-day strategy. How to cover syllabus, all subjects. Yeah, I mean, 15 days. So 15 days is about it. It's not gonna. You can't study everything from scratch, obviously. So you just have to try and consolidate everything that you've already covered. Doing anything new in this period of time will be hard. We've talked about the 15 days, the Hori's coming, question 5. Basic causes me. Oh, okay. 15 days with zero prep. Well, damn. I mean, it's going to be quite tough. Abhi bhi ho sakta hai, provided, of course, you studied really well for your inter exams or your A-level exams. But yeah. Okay, so the cutoff for the AQ test. Acha, so basically, cutoff ke hisab se, if that's what we want to talk about, the thing is that the cutoff of the AKU test is set by AKU every year, and it changes because they make the cutoff such that only 300 or approximately 300 people pass. So if, for example, everyone has done super well, like let's say the test is really easy and everyone has scored like 90%, right? They are going to make the cutoff like 95% just so that only 300 people pass. Similarly, if the test is really, really hard and everyone is scoring like 60%, then the cutoff is always automatically going to be lower. So you worrying about the cutoff is meaningless because the cutoff is going to change on the basis of everyone else's performance. Should we study Punjab book or Sindh book? So I think for the AKU test specifically, it is worth studying the federal textbook. That's, in my opinion, the best one, especially for Chem and Bio. For physics, the Punjab book is really good. And obviously, if the federal book is unavailable or you can't get it, then the Punjab book is great. The reason I say this is because I was told by a storekeeper who I tried buying the book from back at my time, the federal book and the Punjab book are the same thing. And then I think the day before the exam, when someone asked me to send a picture of the federal book, I sent the Punjab book and they were like, this is not the federal book. Meri to, chakke shoot gaye. But the Punjab book is great, because that's what I use for the AQ test, not the federal book. The federal book I used for the MDCAT, but I thought that was better in retrospect, but yeah, reading the books and practicing, that's great. Uh, Practice. The MCAT book from Doger Brothers is a good practice book. No, I don't think so. And the reason from the Doger Brothers is not good is because when I opened it, at least the edition that was there at my time, of the first 10 questions that I saw, 6 were wrong. So I was like, that's it. So I closed it after that. Maybe that was just the first 10 questions that were wrong. But that, in my opinion, was a super generalizable thing. Is in the program fully free for the first 5 toppers? Yes, it is. But in the context that I already talked about, in the sense that it's merit plus need based. So if you are in the top 5 but don't need the money, then you don't qualify. Or at least that's what the criteria was at my time. They change it every year. For the last 3 years, this is what it's been: need plus merit. But sometimes they just decide to do it fully merit based. Sometimes they decide to do it fully need based as well. But yeah, recommend a good book. We already talked about federal. Punjab book is good. Only do AQ high yield chapters and we will pass the cutoff. Again, like I said, the cutoff varies from year to year. It's super different depending on what the scene is. And an easy paper will have a higher cutoff, and a harder paper will have a more difficult cutoff. Yes, share the links. Try. Are high yield topics enough to pass the test? I mean, you can hope that, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's not like the MDCAT where you have a threshold where everyone needs to score, let's say, above 65%, or everyone needs to score above like 90% cutoff for, let's say, I don't know, XYZ medical college merit cutoff, right? It's this is really based on everyone else's performance as well. So if you have only studied high yield topics, there is most certainly going to be someone who has done everything and probably scored higher. And as a result, then the overall test, maybe they will have done higher and they will have passed in that top 300. Because it's not just about you scoring a certain percentage, it's about you being in the top 300. How to crack maths if you haven't touched it for 2 years. So like I said, it's not, you don't need to be worried, because this is the kind of maths that you should know as an 8th grader, right? You don't need to know integration, differentiation, trigonometry, etc., all these difficult concepts. What's more important is you really know basic arithmetic, how to calculate multiplication products, how to calculate quotients, and then just application of certain things. Again, एक गाड़ी इस तरफ यहाँ से आ रही है स्पीड पे, दूसरी गाड़ी इस तरफ वहां से आ रही है स्पीड पे, how many minutes before they might crash? That's basic arithmetic and basic thinking through. So your recent test scores are low and you're really stressed, time is short. So if you want to give the test, but you feel you're a little bit behind, that's okay. That's why doing these tests again and again, and then going back and doing a causal analysis. Why am I getting these things wrong? Why are my scores low? क्या चीजें हैं जो कि मैं गलत बार कर रही हूँ, right? Those are things that are worth thinking about. Because right now, it's like I said, right? Agar 60% एक बार आए, you're going to get 60% 100 times, unless and until you go back and you evaluate what is wrong. And in my opinion, should you manage to crack that, should you manage to understand what exactly you're doing wrong, you are far more likely to perform far better than inshallah on the AQ test, versus you trying to study lots and lots of different concepts but still not being able to do a root cause analysis on what exactly is going wrong. Science achievement portion. Yeah, so the thing is, my opinion of the science achievement portion is going to be a little different, because पहली बात तो, if you're from A levels, the A level curriculum is generally a little bit less rote learning based than the intermetric curriculum. So A level students find it a little bit easier to do the scientific reasoning section. And the second thing is that I like doing these silly brain teasers in my free time all the time anyway. So that's why I found it not to be that difficult. But compared to my high school exam, because I'm from A levels, it was similar, because those exams are designed to make you critically think. Is it normal to leave chapters from each of bio? Is BCM? I think it's biochem maybe. I mean, sure, as long as you have the principles covered, individual factoids, it is hard, and sometimes it is a lot more volatile, and it's okay because AKU generally does not test those individual factoids. Free practice resources for logical and math reasoning. So a lot of the AKU, sorry, a lot of the maths tests and whatnot, like the SAT 1 practice questions, those are quite good. And you can find a lot of those freely available online, especially on Reddit. But you also have like books that are quite cheap to get from the market for SAT 1 practice tests. And just going through those math sections is also good. Is pre-med enough for AKU? Yes, it is. How do we decide which questions we should leave and not attempt if we aren't sure about the answer? And in my opinion, again, it's just based on the objective number of questions, number of options that you have managed to sort of narrow down. If, let's say, for example, you have a question, you've managed to narrow it down to 2 options, but it's like a complete coin toss, right? Just by virtue of the fact that you get a minus 0.25 and you have a 50% chance of getting that question right, I think that's worth it. But again, if it's like 3 options or all 4 options, then it's not worth it, because even if on the 25% chance that you do get it right, you get a +1 and you automatically negate 4 other negative questions, you at the same time are taking a risk that is just not statistically in your favor. So that's the way to determine it. How do we know this is actually difficult? Should we leave this question? Okay. Yeah, I just answered that. Pre-med enough, schedule, and we leave plant chapter. Can we leave the plant chapter? I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I think that I might have left it because there was a question I remember in my bio section, which was like on the stupid calculation of based on the petals what the species was, like which formula out of that. बिल्कुल भी कुछ याद नहीं है उस चीज के वाले से, but I do remember I had to leave that question because I was like, at maximum, ये लोग कितनी ही चीजें पूछेंगे from kingdoms, it's probably not going to be that much. And just on the basis of that, like I decided to skip maybe that specific portion of plants. But and I was right because of the 15 questions that we got, only one was a kingdoms/plant space question. Can we skip memorizing kingdom animalia? I mean, sure, if you want to take that risk. I did that gamble. It paid off for me for that specific plant niche topic. But again, if you want to cover your bases, make sure that you do it. But if you think that you are compromising your preparation by virtue of having to memorize kingdom animalia and you're sort of compromising other things, then absolutely, skip it because it's most likely just not going to be that high yield. Sir, am I practicing pre-med is enough? Pre-med is great. I thought the tips sucked. So pre-med is really good. How did hostelites manage their food and eras at AKU? I will answer that in just a moment. आपके टाइम पे जो लीव टॉपिक्स ज्यादा क्वेश्चंस आए थे और majority of the topics, I mean high yield topics by definition mean that they are the ones that are more often than not tested. Low yield topics कम ही आते हैं, सारी सी बात है, but आते तो हैं. In terms of like 1-2 questions, तो जरूर कोई ना कोई low yield topic पे होगा. So again, focusing on high yield topics is going to probably be safe. But again, the AQ test is that kind of thing where just being safe is not good enough. You have to be in the top 300. If I've scored 75% in HSC1, if I pass AQ test, yes, absolutely, you have a chance. There is no reason that you do not, because like I said, for the most part, after you pass the AQ test, really everyone is on equal academic standing because you've shown that you're smart enough to pass the test, and that's all they really want. Meals. Oh, okay, that's what you meant. So, okay. So I'm not a hostelite. I'm from Karachi. And as such, like my advice on this is probably not going to be as great. But I'm going to tell you what my friends have done. And they just budget on the basis of obviously a specific amount that comes in the start of the month. And then us hisab se. So AKU has a really good thing called the economy meal, which is basically like a meat meal in 60 rupees and a vegetable meal in 40 rupees. And just by virtue of that, you save a lot of money. And then, of course, you can supplement that with however much you want to order out and whatnot. They have a kitchen as well, so you can cook your own food should you want to. But a lot of times you will be tired and in pain. So it is going to be hard. Um, I'm very weak in organic chem, hard to cover for 15 days. Oh my. I mean, organic chem is really, really hard. So, I mean, in 15 days, really, the things that you can do are cover the real major moti cheesing. And if, for example, you happen to be an inter student, then seeing organic chem, at least from the AS syllabus or the A2 syllabus, is worth it because those things gloss over a lot of the additional minor BS details, in my opinion, that the inter syllabus has to cover. So it is worth that. How many days before the test results come out? I mean, the test hasn't happened yet, but I think it's 15 days or 20 days after the actual test. Organic chem के लिए SIM textbook use करने, please do not use the SIM textbook, man. Like, it was so bad. But if you are familiar with it, if you are familiar with it, like I said, sticking to what's familiar, sticking to what worked for you, that's best. So just go for that. So if it's easier for you to rise, absolutely. It's more unlikely that you're going to be, you know, having better concepts should you use a new book now in the last 15 days as compared to should you stick with what's familiar. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Qatari guy. I am not sure when you receive your admit card, bro. Like, I mean, I think you should receive it within like what 3 4 days. As far as I remember, they sent it to me like a week before mine. Where can we submit our phones and exam centers are coming from out of city? So the thing is that as far as I recall, I took a bag inside, and that bag I just kept in the side of the auditorium. Like my test was at AKU. If you're going to be giving a test that is not at AKU specifically, where you cannot guarantee the safety of said bag or whatever, then it's not worth taking it with you. If, for example, a family member or something is dropping you, then just give it to them. Or if you're coming from out of city, then generally, they probably will have collection points. I again have zero experience having given the exam out of city, so I'm sorry, yeah, I can't help you with that. Practicing a lot for organic chemistry, yes, absolutely. Is federal enough for chem? Yes, absolutely. Okay, so just one thing before I sort of just give a little bit of words of advice. Show you guys this. So yeah, okay, this is visible. Great. So this is the 15-day schedule that you guys should follow. So over here, this is all the stuff that we've already talked about in quite a lot of detail. And what specific individual topics that you should do. For those of you guys who are watching this, like do try and maybe take a screenshot of this. But this is the kind of way to, in my opinion, go about this. So you start with intro to biomolecules, stoichiometry, electrochem, vectors, equilibrium, work, power, energy. I'm not going to read through this. You guys can do that on your own time. But the point of this is that you have to do quite a lot per day, right? That being said, it is important to remember why cheese. You guys have already run the marathon. This is the last 100 meters. So, it's really, really important to remember, just don't lose steam. Agar abhi lose steam, lose kar liya, then all the effort that you've put in besides this is just not going to be good enough. So, just going through a little bit slowly so you guys can then sort of watch this. I think you guys will have this shared with you as well. But yeah, so this is the 15-day schedule. So just to conclude, I mean, it's very important to remember a couple of things. The first and foremost of which is, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why is it important to you to be studying for the AQ test? Why do you want to do medicine? And all the associated questions that come along with that. And the reason for that is because once you have that why in your mind, rationalizing the amount of effort that it's going to take, not just to get into AKU, inshallah, but then thereafter becomes a lot easier. You have to ask yourself, is it that I want to get into AKU and pursue medicine, or is it that I want to pursue medicine because I have a chance of getting into AKU and have a chance to go to AKU? Is it that, it's more important for me to come to AKU than it is to pursue medicine? Is that the reason? And उस हिसाब से then you have to then temper your expectations as well. कि अगर खुदा ना खास्ता तुम लोगों का AKU में नहीं हो, then what? You know, is it the end of the world? And the answer to that is no, it's not. Because if you're doing this for the right reasons, and the right reason, in my opinion, is that you want to be the best doctor that you possibly can be, and to make an impact in the world and to prove to people or to do good in the world by virtue of doing medicine, it is really, really not as important to come to AKU as it is to do medicine with integrity, with ethics, and just to be working really, really hard throughout the time that you're doing medicine, irrespective of where you do it. Because what's really, really important to remember is that at the end of the day, the quality of the doctor that you eventually end up becoming, inshallah, is more to do with who you are and how much grit you have and how determined to be amazing you are, as compared to the fact that you are from AKU. There's going to be amazing, amazing people from medical universities you've never heard of. And there's going to be lots of people who perhaps are just not that great from AKU as well. So, at the end of the day, it's so important to just remember to keep your expectations within context. Make sure that you remember the context. Make sure that you remember to keep things in perspective. Abhi ke liye, for the next 15 days, the most important thing in your guys' life has to be passing this test. Lekin, जब तुम लोग दे दोगे टेस्ट, इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट रिमेंबर कि अब कुछ नहीं हो सकता. जितनी तुम लोगों ने मेहनत की थी, जितनी तुम लोगों ने एफर्ट डाली थी, all of that has basically come to this sort of culmination at that test. And अगर खुदा ना खास्ता तुम लोगों का नहीं हुआ, because बहुत सारों का नहीं होगा, सारी सी बात है. If it just doesn't happen, that's okay. And you have to remember that it's okay. Because being a good doctor, being a doctor with integrity, being someone who is there for their patients is far more important than where you do medicine. Remember that. Okay. So just going to go through last couple of questions. Done syllabus. I mean, yeah, revising this stuff is not difficult. Or I mean, it's not going to be detrimental to you in any way. कोई हर्ज नहीं है, समझ लो. So you should do it. Very demotivated. My prep is not enough. I mean, it is hard, man. Like this exam is hard. This test is hard. This entire pathway is hard, and that's why I said, it's important to keep things in perspective. It's okay. अगर सब बाकी सब बोलते हैं यार हमने syllabus भी खत्म कर लिया, and you're like, दो topics मुझसे नहीं हो रहे सही तरीके से, that's fine. It's okay. It's more important. It's far more important that you stop comparing yourself to other people, how prepared and stuff they might be. Go through the stuff till whatever extent is possible for you and do your best. Because if you've done your best, then whatever the result might be at the end of the day, that is something that you can be satisfied with. यार मैंने अपनी पूरी जान मार दी थी and मेरी किस्मत पे बात नहीं थी, and that's fine, right? Unless and until you feel that you have done your best, work hard. Work harder and harder and harder to prove to yourself that, this is all as much as I could possibly have done, and it just was not possible for me to do more. And that's when okay, irrespective of what the result might be at the end of it, that is something that you will be satisfied with deep down. The results will be announced about 2-3 weeks after the test. So should we conclude, Eamon? Or is there any additional thing that you'd like me to talk about? The results will be announced about 2 to 3 weeks after the test, inshallah. Okay, so with that, let's conclude. But I just want to leave you guys again with that super, super important thing to keep in mind. Do not, do not forget to keep things in perspective. It is really, really, really important to remember the quality of the doctor that you will eventually end up becoming. And I'm sure that all of you guys will be absolutely phenomenal. You are completely doing that based on your own grit and your own determination. Because even if, for example, you go to a place with not as many opportunities or not a super vibrant campus life the way that AKU does, you can make those opportunities for yourself and be absolutely spectacular, maybe even better than had you come to AKU. Everything happens for a reason, and be satisfied with whatever outcome happens, provided that you worked hard. Okay. So thank you guys for your time. Just one last thing. I'm going to put my email up on this thing. Let's put it up. Let us add. I'm going to put my email up for any of you guys that want to at any point reach out for whatever reason you might want to. But if anyone wants to reach out and just talk, or maybe you want some additional advice or whatever, again, remember that it's been a long time since I've been through this process. I'm in final year now, so it's been 5 years. But if anyone needs any additional advice or wants to reach out for any reason whatsoever, this is my email. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Pre-Med, for inviting me to do this. I'm really, really grateful and honored. And Jazakallah. Good luck for your guys' test, and inshallah, you guys will all do great. Inshallah. Allah Hafiz.